Hi, I'm Chris James, and you're watching Healthy Alternative. Today, I want to talk about the benefits of Michael, and today we're going to be talking about.
Today we'll be making one of my favorite soups.
Welcome to the
tomato
JR72 Challenge.
I am Animated Mel, and I am your mental and wellness coach for
As always, perfection is not needed, but consistency
We must
is
first
must.
lovingly accept what is. You can't heal a body you hate.
No matter what, you have to put yourself first. If you're not aware that there's change that needs to be made, how can you fix it? This information is fire.
I had to come to the realization that, number one, I was an emotional eater.
We need to accept the decisions that we make, because if we can do that, then we have the power to change them. You came here so that way you can start moving into your heaven path.
Once again, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome this evening. Thank you for joining me on your Friday night. I appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Today, we'll jump right into it. I saw somebody was like, "Is it live starting at 8 or 9?" It's like, hey, I'm sitting here, try to give people a few extra minutes so that way, the ones that are here, that have been here, they know. You know, we try to give you guys like 3 to 5 minutes to join. Because what ends up happening is that we get started, and then you have a bunch of people that, come in a few minutes later, and they come in later, and then of course it gets to the point where you got to go back to the beginning and just watch it. But for the ones that know, if you know, you know, right? But as always, as I typically say, Stephen fashion, try not to be here long. It is Friday night. I know people use this time to, you maybe just got off work and you're trying to relax for the week. So, maybe you have some events going on, you got dinner planned, whatever the case may be. Try not to be here very long. But at the same time, I want to make sure that you get value from being here tonight. So once again, definitely appreciate everybody that is here live and everybody that will be watching the recording. Thank you. It's always appreciated. So as you all know, or maybe as you don't know, right? First things first, we gotta pay the bill, so to speak. So obviously, I'm not Chris James. My name is Stephen Michael. I am an AHA wellness coach. My specialty is in fasting, emotional intelligence, and I also do life coaching as well. So anything that falls kind of under that realm with wellness, kind of what I focus on. Okay, this is that one of the AHA takeovers. I think that we're live right now on X. And for whatever reason, I couldn't get us on Facebook, but we're live on X, aka Twitter, and we are also live on YouTube. So if you catch it on X, what's up? Welcome as well. But today's live is brought to you by AHA's brand new challenge that is releasing. It starts on May 25th. For those that you don't know, it is the DR48 Advanced. So for those of you who were in the previous dry fasting challenge, which is the DR96, we had so many people in there. Actually, it was our biggest challenge to date. And because the dry fasting got such a warm welcome from people and so many results, we did a different one. So this is the DR48, which is another type of, well, it's a hybrid fast. So you have like your regular fasting, which is like typically water fasting. And whenever you start adding 2 or more type of fasts together, it then becomes a hybrid fast. And there are different benefits to hybrid fasting versus just regular fasting. All of them are good, but depending on the person, some things are a little bit different. So If you have not joined yet already, we will once again be launching on May 25th. And if you want to sign up, the link is in the description box of this video. So go down there, sign up. Once again, this is a new challenge. So if you've been in other challenges, this is different. There's new content, core content that will be available. And like I said, this is different. So make sure that you jump down there, sign up, so that way you can get started with us on May 25th. All right. So now that that's out of the way, sponsorships out of the way. I don't know why. I love saying that. I don't know. I just love, I'm looking you in the eyes right now. I love coming on here and just kind of taking over Chris's channel and then teaching something and, give you a little, do a little sponsorship, man. People need to sponsor me more. I don't know. But regardless, whether you sign up or not, completely up to you. I do encourage you to. But stay here today and you will get value. There will be something that you learned today that you did not know before. 100% guarantee. There will be things that you learn, not more than one thing. I can almost guarantee that. But you'll at least learn one thing that you did not know. And if there are things that you did know, you might get a new or interesting perspective on those things. Okay. So make sure that you stay put, lock in, make sure that you grab your pen and paper. So this is not this is not a lecture. This is a presentation, right? So this is more of I guess a lecture. No, it's a presentation, right? So you want to get your pen and paper anytime that you come to at least one of my classes, I call them, and you want to take notes because it's a presentation. And when I go through the information, obviously you won't have access to that information again. So you want to make sure that you do take notes. Okay. All right. Virginia signed up. All right. Yes. All right. So we're going to get started. All right. So we're going to be talking about gut motility. Now, sometimes people hear like the gut and they automatically start thinking about certain things because I'll say right now still, as well as probably in the last 2 or 3 years, the word gut, right, and gut health has been a big thing, right? You've probably seen it on social media. You've seen it on TikTok. You've seen things in passing. You're getting ads for, probiotics and all these things for gut health, right? And all that is very important. But we're going to be talking specifically about gut motility, right? So gut motility, or the speed in which everything moves through your gut. So let me pull this up. And all right. All right. So understanding gut motility 101. And the reason I say 101 is because 101 is like, if you've ever been to college, they have classes, and you'll have classes that are not always, but let's say they'll start with a 1, or they'll be 401 or 501. And then the more advanced classes will be like 105 or 103, right? Depending on the class and everything. So this is 101, right? So this is the beginning, but there is some really good information in here, once again, that probably is a little bit more advanced, but we'll get going, right? So understanding gut motility. So what is gut motility? So when you hear that word, what does this mean? So gut motility, at the basis of it, is the movement of food, liquids, and waste through the digestive tract. Probably can't be any more simple than that, right? Or you have other terms, but we're not going to get into that right this second, but that's what it is. Now, when you talk about that digestive tract, or people think the gut, people think that It's just your stomach. Well, your digestive system starts literally in the mouth, right? You have two different types of digestion. You have chemical digestion and then you have mechanical digestion. Both of them work in concert to, of course, accomplish the goal of an overall total digestion. So, an example of like chemical digestion are your stomach acids, right? Your saliva. They're chemicals that help with the breakdown of food. And then you have your mechanical digestion, which is like your teeth, right? You're chewing, right? It is something that's physically happening to help break down these foods. Okay. Now you have motilin. Now we're going to get into this a little bit more, but this is one of those things where a lot of people don't know. But motilin is one of the key hormones. I would say the key hormone that impacts gut motility specifically, right? And it greatly increases during periods of fasting. So make sure that you remember that, right? Motilin is the key hormone that impacts gut motility and greatly increases during periods of fasting. Now, there are other hormones that come into play, but motilin is the main one, right? So you see how they do that. You have motilin, and then you have motility, right? Kind of I don't know how science does that. It kind of makes sense though, right? But simply put, the digestive system converts foods that we eat into their simplest forms, right? For example, like glucose, sugars, right? Amino acids, those are proteins. So proteins, you'll hear me talk about protein all the time. Protein gets digested, and then you don't digest protein, you digest the amino acids. The body can't use protein, it uses the amino acids. And then you have fatty acids, right? But these acids are, of course, make up fats, right? So the broken down food is then absorbed into the bloodstream from the small intestine, and then nutrients are carried into each cell of the body, right? Now, also, I want you to remember when we're talking about motility and digestion in general, I want you to pay particular attention to the small intestine, because there's a lot of stuff happening. There's a lot of different organs, and there's a lot of different systems that are involved to make up the digestive system, right? But the small intestine is the one that primarily does all the absorbing. Okay, and this is going to make. I'll just remember that. That'll make a little more sense as we kind of go through things. But if you have issues with your small intestine, you're going to have issues absorbing, which is going to lead to a lot of other issues, right? So why does gut motility matter? You're like, Stephen, sounds good, but why does this matter, right? Gut motility matters because it is crucial for overall health, because it facilitates digestion, nutrient absorption, and waste removal, right? Proper motility prevents food from becoming stagnant, which can lead to inflammation, blockages, weight gain, and of course, many other things. It also helps maintain a healthy balance of gut bacteria and a stable microbiome, right? Your gut motility also plays a major role in your gut microbiota, right? So if you start looking into like the gut and the microbiome, there's two different words that you hear, and typically it's not wrong to hear them interchangeable, but they if you to make it make a little more sense, you can use the term microbiome as in talking about your overall total bacteria in your gut, right? And then you have microbiota when you're speaking about a very specific type of bacteria, right? So think of one as like the plural version and one is singular. Just think of it that way. Makes it a little bit easier to understand when you're thinking about it. Working on a leaky gut. Okay. Well, so want to get ahead of myself. Focusing on gut motility can help you. And there's a bunch of different reasons why. And maybe I'll try to remember to kind of go over that. But I'll remember because there's a part in here, right? So we have these main parts here: digestion and nutrient absorption, and waste removal, right? So let's talk about them a little bit more. So digestion, gut motility, including peristalsis. That word for me is so hard to say, and it comes up multiple times throughout this. So if I mess it up, don't be mad at me, right? So peristalsis is a wave-like muscle contraction that happens throughout the intestinal tract after it's kind of gone through the stomach. But it happens all over the place. Actually, it happens all over. But we typically feel it. What we feel or what we experience is usually in your stomach area. Um, but this mixes food with digestive juices and it propels it through the digestive tract. Now, peristalsis is something that a lot of people have heard that term before. So we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but there's another term that a lot of people haven't heard that we're going to talk about a little bit more as well, which I think was going to be very key for people understanding this process. Now, this process breaks down food into smaller molecules that can be absorbed into the bloodstream, as we spoke about with digestion. In order for the body to actually process and use any of the food that we eat, has to go through a process of being broken down from larger to smaller to smaller to smaller pieces to the point where it actually can be used. Now, proper motility ensures that the small intestine has sufficient time to absorb nutrients from ingested food. Remember that. Once again, small intestine is so very important. Now, there's other parts of that are in the small intestine, like the duodenum, that are important as well. Very important, actually. And the whole system is important. But a lot of times when we're having issues with like our gut, whether it's our gut lining or whether we're having issues with bacteria, a lot of that is going to either happen or it's going to or stem from, or it will be happening in the small intestine because it's small, as the term says, but it's actually very long. You have the small intestine and the large intestine. The large intestine isn't particularly longer, it's a lot bigger. Okay. So the small intestine does all the absorbing. Okay. So remember that if you ever have any issues or you go to the doctor, if you get a micronutrient test and they're like, oh my God, you have issues with with malnutrition or you're missing certain nutrients. And you're like, man, I eat a lot of this. I don't understand how I don't have this, right? Or how I am in missing or deficient in this certain mineral or vitamin. Even though you might be low on vitamin C, and you're like, I take a vitamin C supplement, I eat citrus fruits all the time, I drink juices like here and there. I don't understand how I can be low. Well, there's probably an issue in the small intestine. For some reason, it's not getting absorbed, and that can happen for a lot of reasons. But one of the biggest things is that there may be an issue with motility, right? Motility also assists with waste removal. So gut motility is essential for moving waste products through the large intestine and out of the body as stool, including the migrating motor complex, or the MMC, which we will talk about that a little bit more, but that's a term that most people have never heard of. And it's something that a lot of people don't feel, or they mistake it for peristalsis. Improper motility can lead to constipation, where stool becomes difficult to pass, and can lead to complications like hemorrhoids and anal fissures. It can also lead to chronic diarrhea that can cause dehydration, malnutrition, and infections. So when we think about motility and we think about speed of motility, it's not simply about things like, oh, we just want to move faster and faster and faster. Sometimes, not most, but sometimes it's too fast and things are moving too quickly. And that's a problem. They're both a problem, but most of the time, people are not having issues with things moving too fast. They're having issues with things moving too slow. Okay. So, gut health and the microbiome, right? So, motility helps prevent stagnation and bacterial overgrowth in the intestines, like SIBO. So, SIBO is an acronym for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Okay. So, for example, if you are having a lot of issues with stomach pain anytime you eat, if you are eating fiber or fibrous foods, or if you have an issue eating raw foods, there may be an issue with SIBO. there may be an issue where the bacteria, so I'll explain what that means. Bacteria primarily lives in the colon and the lower end of your intestinal tract. Okay. What can happen over time is due to processed foods, processed sugar, and stagnation or food that is or slow motility. What can happen is that foods moves much more slowly than it should, and then you have bacteria that may have gone through the gut lining, or it has basically jumped from nutrition piece, food, let's just say food, where food should be moving a little more quickly, but because it's so slow, bacteria has found a way to then creep up into the small intestine. This does not happen quickly. This happens over time. And then when it gets into the small intestine, then it starts to cause problems because you're not supposed to have certain bacteria in your small intestine. Right? They're supposed to be contained in the lower intestine, is where they live. Now, these bacteria begin to proliferate and they begin to then become larger. They then start to multiply. And then you have bacteria that is essentially eating the food that you were supposed to be absorbing because it's in the small intestine, right? And now that food or those nutrients are no longer making it down to the through the small intestine. They're not getting absorbed properly. And then now you start having issues, right? Maybe you have magnesium that's getting stolen by a bacteria. Now, all of a sudden, you're deficient in magnesium. And you're like, I don't understand why, right? You go to your doctor and the doctor says, well, these are the type of foods that you should be eating. You're like, I eat all those, right? You may have a bacteria that's actually stealing the nutrients out of your food, right? So this is what happens with SIBO. It also helps regulate the production and activity of gut microbes, which play a vital role in digestion, immunity, and overall health. Probably talk about this a little bit more, but you have different types of digestion that happens throughout the body. And you have microbes or your microbiome that is a part of that digestive process. So you don't just have this colony that living in there and just doing nothing, right? Where we feed our gut bacteria. And some people may be like, okay, well, I've heard that before, right? But there's a certain particular food that they enjoy to eat, and that is fiber. But a lot of times we don't get enough fiber. And this is one of the reasons why you may have issues digesting certain foods, right? You may eat kale or you may eat anything cruciferous because they're a little bit more difficult to digest. If you didn't grow up eating a lot of those foods, or if you were the child that just didn't eat their vegetables, or your parents didn't eat vegetables, whatever the case may be, you may not have the bacteria in your gut that does a great job of breaking down those foods. Or you may have them, but you may have them in a smaller amount. And a lot of times, this can lead to different uncomfortabilities. So gut motility plays a large role in that, because if you're not able to eat fiber and you're not able to feed the gut, then you're going to have a lot of issues, and you're going to have issues with constipation, and the motility of your gut is going to struggle. So what are some things that impact gut motility? So we have two different lists here. I have things that are positive, so things that positively impact your gut. And then I have things that are negative, or things that negatively impact your gut. So we'll go through kind of the negative things first. So high processed sugar intake. So a lot of these are going to kind of make sense, right? And if you've been in the wellness space, there's a lot of things that you hear all the time that are negative and also positive. And it just goes to show you how harmful certain things are, right? So high processed sugar intake. So if you're eating a lot of processed sugar, it's going to not just negatively affect all other kinds of things, but specifically it affects gut motility. Processed foods of every kind negatively impact your gut motility. One of the biggest reasons is because there's no hydration in them typically. No real hydration. There may be water in the cake that they use to make it, but there's no hydration in that cheesecake, right? A high fatty diet. Now, I will say that if we're talking about a high fatty diet, I am more or less talking about processed or bad fats. right? Because there's a difference between good fats and bad fats. But if you're on a high fat diet, most of the time, people are on a lot of bad fats. So you're not eating a lot of avocados, you ain't eating a lot of nuts, right? You're probably eating a lot of other fatty foods. This is a problem for some people with keto because keto is a high fatty diet. And unless you're eating a lot of, or mainly whole foods on a keto diet, your motility is going to be impacted in a negative way. And there's a lot of people that I have worked with personally that have stopped keto because they're like, I was getting constipated, right? They tell you to eat a bunch of cheese and all these other type of things and eating a lot of fat. But a lot of the good fats that we should be eating, if you're talking about a high fat diet, we don't eat. So we end up eating a lot of bad fats. Opioids. Now, whether you're taking them recreationally or you were taking them because you're in the hospital or something, they're going to negatively impact your motility. You're going to get constipated. Antibiotics, unfortunately, obviously, literally bomb your gut. They don't just bomb the gut; they bomb your entire body. Right? They're indiscriminate. So when you take antibiotics because something happens or you get an infection or something, one of the things that I tell people immediately after is start taking a pre and a probiotic to help reculture your gut because they literally just kill everything. And usually the first thing that comes back is going to be bad bacteria because it's extremely resilient. And if you take antibiotics very frequently, you definitely want to be making some changes with your fiber intake because you're just constantly bombing your gut bacteria. All right, low fiber intake, lack of exercise. Now, exercise. When I say exercise, I'm not talking about just like lifting weights, right? Exercise can be almost anything. Just move your body, right? But if you're not moving your body, or if you like say for example, if you work in an office setting, something that you have to go out of your way to do is make sure that you make time for exercise or movement. I'll say whether that is making sure that every hour that you get up and you just take a walk to the water cooler, or whatever, if you can, make sure you do that. But on top of that, I mean, if you're sitting for 8.5, 9 hours a day, primarily, you do want to find time to walk outside for 30 minutes to an hour. Find a way to get in some sort of exercise into your daily regimen, whether it's at the gym or whether it's through some other way. It's very important, particularly when it comes to gut motility, right? Motion, you need that. Stress, dehydration, and then you have, of course, different, I'll call them ailments or diseases that particularly are affected or affect motility. IBS, which is going to be too fast motility. I had a boss that had IBS, and he struggled a lot. And this is before I knew anything about wellness. This is before my health journey started. And, there were just so many different foods. He was like, I can't eat this. I can't eat that. It just literally just triggers my IBS. And I'm instantly in the bathroom. I mean, he was literally in the bathroom, I don't know, at least at work 4 or 5 times a day because it was a high stress job. It was sales. So he was under a lot of pressure. And there's an ailment there. I mean, obviously now if I could speak to him, there's a lot that we could talk about, right? Diabetes and SIBO, which we discussed. All these things negatively impact your motility or the speed of which food moves through your digestive system, right? Now, positive, right? What are different things that affect it positively? Fiber, very important, very big. Talk about this a little bit more, but you have fiber, right? Hydration, super important as well. Now, something to note for those of you who maybe are new here, or if when you hear hydration, you think water. That's not particularly what we're talking about. What I'm talking about, water is important, as in the hydration process, but it is not the only part of it, right? Hydration. When we're talking about hydration, we're talking about cellular hydration. So this is going to be water that comes primarily from your foods. These are going to be your whole foods. These are primarily your fruits and vegetables. These things are extremely hydrating. And there's also ways you can hydrate the water that you get just out of your tap, we'll say, so to speak. But when we're talking about hydration, we're primarily talking about foods that offer or lend hydration to the body versus foods that take hydration from the body. Okay. Every food does one or the other. It will either give you hydration or it will take hydration. Okay. And just because the food is liquidy or I don't know, like Jello. I don't Jello came to mind. I'm trying to think of something, right? Jello is not hydrating, even though you may eat Jello and you're like, oh, this is kind of like a liquid, da da da. It's not hydrating. Soda, not hydrating. These are dehydrating foods. Okay. But if you have an apple, if you have a banana, or banana's not the best, but it's still hydrating. Pears, right? Almost any fruit, watermelon, very hydrating, right? These basically are foods that you eat and they give you hydration. They don't necessarily take hydration away from you. Deep breathing, very good for motility. Short chain fatty acids, basically what these are foods that are fermented. So similar to fiber, but I use SCFAs simply because they're a little different. So like different fermented foods, things like that, break down into short chain fatty acids, which are a little different from just fatty acids, particularly, and these are what your gut feeds on. Okay. Raw foods, dried fruits, and fruit juices. Fruit juices, we're not talking about Dole or Mott's, right? That you get from the grocery store. I'm talking about you go down to the juicer and you cut up a watermelon, you cut up your apples and your celery, you put it in, you get that juice out, right? Now these are also obviously hydration, but I particularly wanted to add fruit juices for a reason, which I'll explain in another chart, another slide, right? All right, just looking here, see if there was any questions about that. All right, cool. All right, y'all good. All right, we learning. Matthew says, stay on track. You got this. That was a little. All right. So what are some warning signs, right? Some warning signs that you have slow motility. If you're like, Steven, I don't know if my motility is slow or fast. Well, let me give you some warning signs, right? If you deal with constipation, you have slow motility. Now, I'm not talking about you just ate a meal and that one meal happened to like make you feel constipated. I'm not talking about that, right? Just off one meal. But I'm talking about like if every time you go to the bathroom, there's pellets instead of large, long, smooth, bowel movements, you're constipated. I won't, but you should look up different types of constipation and what they look like so that way you have an understanding really of what constipation is, right? Because people think that, well, I go to the bathroom every day, I'm not constipated, right? I've known people that literally would go to the bathroom once every 2 or 3 days. Now we're talking that's extreme constipation. But you can have constipation on a day-to-day basis. Okay. This is important to understand because a lot of times people think, oh, I poop every day, I'm not constipated. That's not true. Right. Now, obviously, depending on what you're eating, will determine, of course, what your bowel movements may look like. So, for example, if I have sometimes I'll have a smoothie and maybe that's all I had for that day. Literally, I just had a smoothie. And the next morning, I'll get up and it's not going to be a long cylindrical poop because it's a smoothie, right? That's understandable. But if you're eating a lot of like fibrous foods and things that are going to stick together, right, and everything, these should be long, strain of movements. Okay, so I would implore you to look up what constipation looks like so that way you have an understanding. You'd be like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm constipated. Okay. Now something also to note, when you are having movements daily, you really should have a bowel movement shortly, well, not shortly, depending on what you're eating. You should have a movement typically briefly after each meal. Now, depending on what that meal is, will determine how fast it gets digested, and depending on how strong your motility is, will determine how fast it comes out. So I'm very cautious to say it in that way of you should have a movement after each meal, but you essentially should probably having at least two a day. If you're not having at least two a day and you are eating, right? So you're not fasting, right? And you're just going through life and you're eating and you're not having at least two a day, you're probably dealing with some level of constipation and slow motility, right? Abdominal pain, and this can happen after eating. Usually, let's say you eat and then probably an hour or so after, or even like the next morning, if you eat at night and the next morning you wake up and your stomach just hurts, there may be some issues with slow motility. Infrequent bowel movements, which we talked about, feeling overly full even after a small meal. So if you just have, you know, a small salad. Now, we're not talking about after fasting, right? Because after fasting, you can have an apple and you're like, man, I'm full, right? But we're talking about just on a normal day to day. If you feel overly full all the time and you didn't eat that much, then there's probably some issues with motility. Things are probably getting backed up. They're not moving as quickly as they should, right? Yes, the live will be available as soon as it's over. The live will be available, so you can go back and watch what you missed. Nausea, acid reflux, bloating, hard stools, right? So if you go to the bathroom and you're pooping and it feels like you're just going hard, and then you get pellets, or it's like, bro, that was way too much. Like for this small amount, you feel like it was a crazy poop and it wasn't, and it looks hard and they're small. Yeah, there's some issues there, right? A mix of constipation and slow motility. Then you have the converse, which is too fast, because we think, okay, well, slow motility is bad. Well, then fast motility must be good. Well, yes and no. There is a balance. Everything in life is about balance. So you don't want too fast, right? So too fast motility, right? You'll have diarrhea. Once again, typically see this in people with IBS. Dizziness. This says, I'm sorry, I made a little mistake here. This should say frequent bowel movements, not infrequent. So frequent bowel movements. So as I stated when I said that you should have a bowel movement after every meal. Think back to my boss that I was telling you about that has IBS, right? He was pooping 4 or 5 times a day at work. Very different than pooping after every meal. Okay. Now, if you have IBS, you know it. It's terrible. I would not wish that on anybody. Because sometimes, I don't know why he was telling me this stuff, but sometimes like you poop and it's just liquid, just almost felt like stomach acids. And sometimes you'd have the feeling of poop and then nothing comes out. And it's just like, bro, this is terrible. Bloating after small meals and stomach pains. So there's some similarities between slow motility and too fast motility, and how you feel, or the symptoms that you present. But if you have too fast motility, you'll know it. Most people don't have that issue. Most people have issues with slow motility. Right, let's keep moving. So a little bit earlier, we talked about MMC, or I used the term. Now, there's also the term peristalsis, and they are not the same, and they should not be used interchangeably. But this is a term that a lot of people have never heard about, that happens very slowly, and understanding what MMC is will make you look at a lot of like diet advice, or like where the health industry is, or let's say the health and fitness industry, And the advice that we've been given over the last, I don't know, 30 years about how often we should eat and such, this may make a little bit of sense to you of why we want to go the opposite route, or why like intermittent fasting and such is so good, right? So peristalsis and MMC. Peristalsis is the smooth muscle contraction that happens during, very important word there, during the process of eating, that helps move food from the beginning of the digestive process that starts in the mouth all the way to the very end, which then goes out the anus. Okay. Now you have the converse, right? So once again, everything in life is about balance. So you have the converse, which is MMC, or the migrating motor complex. This is a cycle of contractions that happen during non-periods of eating when food is not present. So you have one of these types of functions, peristalsis, that happens when you're eating, and then you have another function that happens when you're not eating, right? Now, both can present a similar feeling in the body, so it's almost impossible to differentiate the two normally, right? But in the body, but the functions they are performing are very different. So my people that have fasted before, or maybe you have woken up and maybe you're not fasting, maybe you're intermittent fasting, and you kind of go throughout your day, and maybe you get a little hungry, and then the hunger goes away, and then you start feeling almost like this feeling of digestion happening. It's not peristalsis. You haven't eaten anything since last night, right? All the food that you have eaten has moved past the stomach. So what are you feeling? You're feeling the MMC, right? But a lot of times they get confused. Oh, this is awesome. So, all right, Matthew, thank you, bro. I see. All right, here we go. Now we teaching now. All right. Now let's talk about some of the differences between peristalsis and MMC, and what are the key differences, right? So, peristalsis, it propels food and waste through the digestive tract from the esophagus all the way to the anus, right? MMC, or the migrating motor complex, cleanses and sweeps undigested food, bacteria, and dead cells from the small intestine. Now, hold on a second, Stephen. A little earlier, we talked about SIBO. We talked about how important the small intestine is to absorbing. I saw someone in the comments say that they were low on iron, and there was a few other things. And I talked about how the small intestine is in charge of absorbing, right? Now, if you're eating a whole food based diet primarily, then you should be getting everything that you mentioned within your diet, right? You also said kale, right, which has lots of iron in it. Spinach has a lot of iron in it. All these different things, right? So you should be getting that iron, but why aren't you? If we are told to eat, previously, we were told we should eat 3 meals a day, 3 squares, right? Then things changed, and then now they say that we should be eating every 3 hours. Instead of 3 large meals, we should be eating 6 small meals. Well, now hold on a second. Or, right, you're told that you should eat 3 large meals with 2 snacks in between. Why? Oh, because it helps you keep your metabolism up. You keep it's like a fire, it's like a furnace. As long as you keep it on and burn. Now that's all nonsense, and we know that, right? Anyone that's done any fasting, you lost any weight with fasting, you know you don't require food in order for your metabolism to go crazy and lose weight, right? But the MMC is in charge of cleaning and sweeping undigested food, bacteria, and dead cells from the small intestine. Peristalsis doesn't do that. Now, in order for you to activate MMC, you have to be in a period of non-eating. Now, we're not talking about you just ate and then immediately now MMC turns on. No, it takes about 2 hours. About 2 hours before it even turns on. Right? Now, if you're eating every 3 hours, or if you're grazing, right? People are like, oh, I just graze, right? Now we can understand why grazing is not good and how it can cause a weight gain, things of that nature. But from a health standpoint, grazing is not good, right? You have people they can be small and they can get SIBO, right? SIBO doesn't care. You can have people that are small and they can have deficiencies. And they're like, well, I don't eat a lot. I just eat all throughout the day. Well, you don't get a chance to activate your migrating motor complex, which means that the bacteria and undigested food and dead cells are not getting cleaned from your small intestine, which makes it very difficult for you to then digest food, right? Because you're not absorbing. Now, most people have never heard that before. Maybe you have. That's good. If you have, that's good. Right. But I learned this a little while ago and I was like, this is so good. Right. One of the reasons why fasting is so beneficial with cleansing, right? While you can go and do a 10-day fast and then you have a bowel movement on day 1, 2, and 3, and then you don't have another bowel movement until 8 or 9. And you're like, I had this craziest poop. It wasn't huge, but it was black and it was dark. And it was just like, and it smelled so bad. Why? Because you gave your body time to activate MMC, right? You've heard us in the beginning of AHA, if you've been around, and how your bowels get cleaned out and how you will still poop. It'll be much less frequent, but you'll still poop. And you're like, I don't understand. I'm not eating anything, right? And you'll notice the difference because the color is different, the smell is different, and this is the MMC finally being able to actively do a major deep clean in your small intestine. Oh, okay. All right. Peristalsis occurs continuously during digestion and is stimulated by the presence of food. MMC occurs in a cyclic pattern between meals, typically every 90 to 120 minutes. So the MMC is a process that cycles ever so often. It doesn't happen constantly. While peristalsis, while you're eating and food is digesting in the beginning, will be continuous. MMC is cyclic. So it goes through phases, which we'll talk about here, right? Peristalsis involves coordinated contractions and relaxations of circular and longitudinal muscles. I said that word wrong. In the digestive tract walls. While MMC involves 4 different phases of contraction and relaxation periods, including a period of dormancy and strong repetitive contractions. So both of them have contractions. And this is why I say we don't always know which one it is, especially if we don't even know these two processes even exist, but they feel the same because it's simply a contraction. So sometimes we can feel like we're digesting, or you can hear the digestion. You just ate, but your stomach rumbles a little bit. You're digesting, right? Sometimes your stomach will rumble, or you may feel like you're digesting something, but you haven't eaten, right? And you're not hungry. Your MMC is kicking in, right? Now, that would be phase 3 of the MMC because it has 4 phases. First one is called the quiet phase, where no contractions are present, but things are starting to kick up. The body's like, okay, we're not eating. We good? Can I start this process of cleaning? Like, everybody all right? Right? It's like going to work and then let's say you work at a fast food restaurant or restaurant of any sort, and you close at 10 o'clock, right? And now maybe you start cleaning up a little bit. It's 9:30. You got people coming in. It's been a slow night, but you're like, I can't put everything away. Like, I really can't clean for real, because I know somebody can walk in that door at 9:55, and guess what? We're not going to be happy with them. If you've ever worked in food service, I've worked in food service. You got to keep the doors open, and if somebody walks at 9:55 and they want order, you got to serve them. That's the way it works, right? So in phase 1, the body's like, all right, well, I know we're about to get started, so I'm going to start making preparations, but no contractions yet. We're not going to really start cleaning, but we're preparing, Okay. Then you have phase number 2, which is irregular contractions. Now, these are once again something that you're probably not going to feel. And and I'm sure there's a specific timing to them based upon your own body, but based upon science and what they have studied, there are not specific regular intervals of these contractions. Phase 3 is usually what, if you feel them, this is what you may feel. Now, these are strong coordinated contractions or the cleaning phase. These may also feel like peristalsis or something moving through your digestive system, or you won't think that's my digestive system. You'll think that's my stomach, right? Because that's where everything is located. You'll think it's just your stomach, okay? And then phase 4 is a rapid decrease in contractions in transition back to phase 1. So as you kind of go through this process, right? So depending on how long this process takes, right, as your own body, you will start to feel those contractions, and then it'll be a short period, and then it will rapidly decrease, and then slowly transition back to phase 1. Now, this happens continuously throughout the body all the time, as long as you're not eating. So if you have issues with absorption, right? And probably the better thing to say is, if you have issues with deficiencies, then you probably have an issue with your small intestine, as I stated before. If you've looked up or done any kind of research on SIBO and you think you have an issue with SIBO, there's an issue in your small intestine as well, and you're not giving the body time to activate the MMC, or the migrating motor complex, to actually clean out the small intestine. Y'all see where this is going? See, if I was in church, I'd be like, "Amen." All right. Like, do y'all understand, right? That's what that means. Do you understand? Right? But you can probably see where this is going, right? So now you're probably asking, Stephen, this sounds really good. How can I determine if I have fast or slow motility? Well, guess what? I have something for you, right? Now you can, of course, go to a doctor. Let me read here. There are different tests your doctor can do to determine motility in your body, but there's a natural way also. This is called the gut corn test. Now, if you want to, and you want to get tested for motility, basically what they do is they basically feed you something, and unfortunately, it is infused with a radioactive type of material. And what this will do is this will allow them to track that food or that object that you ate, and track how long it takes for it to move throughout your system. And this will let them know how fast it took to go through the full digestive process. Okay. But if you don't feel like having some radiation test done on you, you can use this. Now, this may make a little sense to you because we've all had corn before, and we wonder, like, oh my God, like corn, like I had corn last night and I see it in the toilet, or I had corn a day or two ago and I see it in the toilet, right? Depending on your speed of your motility, right? But this is called the gut corn test. Now, the reason that corn is used, there's another test that you would use if you were fasting, particularly after juice fasting. There's a prune test. I'm not going to get into that today because it really isn't going to make sense based on what we're talking about. But there is a prune test to test motility speed. And prunes are crazy. They digest so fast. But that's a different conversation. But we're talking about while life is happening, you're not in a position to do that yet. You're not doing this long juice fast, right? So the reason that corn is used, because corn in its whole state does not digest. It has a very hard outer shell with a structure on it around it that's a protective structure that is able to bypass the digestive fluids in the stomach, so it doesn't get broken down. This is why even after you cook corn, you can still see corn in your stool a day or 2 days later, right? Because it doesn't break down the way that it's supposed to. Now, sometimes it'll break down to a certain degree and it may not look like corn, right? But it's not getting digested. But if you eat corn, almost 100% guarantee, if you eat if you eat enough of it and you're paying attention, you'll see specks of corn in your poop a day or two after. So, so what you would do is you're going to take 10 to 15 unpopped kernels of corn and you're going to swallow them, right? Don't chew them. First of all, if you don't want to break your teeth, don't don't chew them. And then you're going to log the date and time that you did it. So, for example, if you were like, "Oh my God, this sounds crazy. I want to test this tonight," you would say, "All right, you take your 10 to 15 kernels. I would just do 15, and then you log it 8 p.m. Friday the 16th, right?" Now, over the next couple of days, depending on your motility, you're gonna check the toilet. Now, you're going to be looking for kernels. Okay, they're going to come out whole, and what you may notice is that you have one or two, right, and then you may have another poop, and there'll be more, right, that are coming out. I would suggest looking at the first time and then see if you have any more again. Okay. You can, if you really wanted to get funky, you can average those 2 times together. So from the time that you first saw them to the time that you last saw them, right? You can average those 2 times together to get, a different number. But just for that, hey, if you want to go through all that, that's fine. It's not hard to do. But you just want to make sure that you're checking and looking for kernels, right? Once you spot them, you just log it, right? Day and time. Okay. And then, I would continue just to keep looking, just see if any more still come out. And then you can average those all those times together. Now, step number 4 is then you would simply calculate the time pass from the start time to the end time. And this is your current transit speed. Very simple. So if you find that it's taking 48 hours for kernels to come out, you have slow transit time, right? The average transit time is said to be about 12 to 24 hours for what we would consider normal. Now, the reason I put normal in quotations is because normal is based upon everyone in the world. Now, we're all wellness people, so we know that we would not want to lump ourselves in the category of normal, okay? Because you have people that eat all kinds of stuff and are considered healthy, but we know that they're not particularly healthy. I would expect to have a faster transit time than what would be normal, okay? So it may be 24 hours. Hey, that doesn't mean it's bad, right? Once again, if you start to get to 48, if you get to 72, these are very long, and you probably have a much larger issue with constipation, chronic constipation, but definitely the motility is slow. I have seen things even up to where they have considered 72 hours normal. I wouldn't consider that normal. If you leave food sitting out for 72 hours and you smell it, it don't smell normal. It's being broken down by the air, by the oxygen. Bacteria is attacking it. It's rotting. This is what's happening in your stomach. So you don't want food in your system for 72 hours. That's why not sometimes, for a lot of people, they poop and it's like, bro, this bathroom is horrendous. Now I can understand poop's not smelling pleasant, right? But it should not be to the point where someone's like, hey man, get us an hour before you go up in there, right? 35, 45 minutes, right? You got to hit the spray. Like, it shouldn't be like that. Okay. Now, if transit time is too slow, nutrients overprocess and they don't get absorbed, right? And then you basically leave your gut with nothing. If transit time is too fast, nutrients will not get absorbed, and this can cause constipation or diarrhea. So you don't want transit time too fast, right? But you also don't want it at particularly at 48 or 72 hours. Okay. Ideally, right, just for purposes of the world, 12 to 24 hours is considered normal. Now you will find that hey, listen, I'd be making my smoothies, and the next morning that smoothie's in the toilet. You know what I'm saying? Like it's it or that or later that day, that smoothie's in the toilet. So and you know it's a smoothie because you know what you ate and the color, hey, you know what it is. Okay. So try not to get too deep on poop here. All right, let me keep moving here. We got wrap. Let's see. Hey, if I ever tell you we're gonna move fast tonight, just I'll be lying. I'll be trying, but technically it took like 10 minutes for us to get started. So that 10 minutes don't count. Right now, let's talk a little bit about some things you can do to increase your motility. Okay. So you have this little chart here that we'll talk about here in a second. But now there's three different types of things that really benefit motility. You have polyphenols, dietary fiber, and sorbitol. Okay, polyphenols are plant-based compounds found in fruits, vegetables, herbs, teas, chocolates. There are other things as well, but primarily, which I mean that list is actually long, right? Fruits, vegetables alone, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of different types of foods, right? Herbs, which another, right? Whatever, teas and chocolate, right? These are polyphenols. You have dietary fiber, right? Which is a type of fiber that the body cannot digest. Now, say that with an asterisk, because there are two different types of fiber. We are talking about dietary fiber, so we're talking about insoluble fiber. But I just want to, for some people, they don't know that there's two different types of fiber. You have soluble versus insoluble fiber. The difference is one can be dissolved in water, one cannot. That's the basic difference, but they're very different. But dietary fiber is kind of what we're talking about here. And then you have sorbitol. Now, if you understand anything about ingredients, you've probably heard sorbitol, and you're like, sorbitol isn't good. Well, yes, processed sorbitol isn't, but we're talking about sorbitol in its natural form. So this is a type of sugar alcohol that naturally occurs in different types of fruits and vegetables, particularly in stone fruits like apricots, peaches, and nectarines, as well as apples, all different kinds of berries. Sorbitol can also be found in dried fruits like prunes and raisins. Dried fruits are high in sorbitol because you're removing the hydration essentially from them, and you're condensing it, and it increases the sugar alcohol in that food. So there's a very big difference between eating a bowl of grapes and a bowl of raisins. I would not particularly suggest eating a bowl of raisins just as a snack, or really any dried food in high amounts, because the hydration is removed. That's the number one thing. And then, of course, the sugar gets concentrated, and it's much easier to eat a lot of raisins versus a larger amount of grapes, right? And, of course, prunes. So on this chart here, you'll see three different things, right? And each one of them are beneficial on their own, right? So you have polyphenols, which we talked about, dietary fiber, and you have sorbitol. Now, there are five different foods here that are high in all three. All right. These are going to be fresh fruits, dried fruits, freeze-dried fruit powders, fruit pulp, and fruit peels. Now, typically, if we're talking about fruit pulp, when we hear fruit pulp, we're usually thinking about like juicing it and then eating the pulp. That's not particularly what that means. I wouldn't suggest that, right? So fruit pulp would literally just mean you eat the actual fruit. Just think of it that way, okay? That's why, yeah. But if you want to eat fruit pulp, or if you take fruit pulp and then you just mix it into your smoothie, stuff like that. You can do that as well. Okay. Because it's a lot of dietary fiber. You can also see this on the left-hand side, or the top left-hand side, right? Fruit pumice, right? Things like that. Basically the same thing. Fruit peels. I would not suggest eating tons of fruit peels, particularly like citrus and stuff like that. But things like apples, right? You eat the peel. Not tangerines, plums, right? Think of fruit peels, think of those fruits. Certain fruits you can eat the peel, but they may be extremely bitter or extremely sour, and they're just not palatable. And then right underneath that, you have fruit juice. Fruit juice is a little bit different, right? So you have the polyphenols. There's no dietary fiber because the dietary fiber has been removed, right? Or the fruit pumice, right? But it also does have sorbitol. So you get 2 out of 3 with fruit juice. But these top 5 is where you get the massive amount of benefits on gut motility, specifically when you are eating these types of foods. But fruit juice is really good as well. You're just missing the dietary fiber. So this is one of the reasons why fruit juice is so good. It has a massive benefit to your gut in so many different ways. It has soluble fiber, right? You're missing the insoluble fiber in fruit juice, but it has tons of soluble fiber, which help, of course, feed the body. It's great for cleaning out the small intestine. If you're looking to clean out the small intestine, a fruit juice cleanse specifically is extremely powerful for that. Kiwi is good as well. There were other things that I could have listed, but yeah, kiwi is fantastic. Right, so here's a couple of different beneficial tools, which kind of summarizing a lot of the tools we talked about earlier. Hydration, right? Not water, hydration, right? Which includes the foods you eat and the foods you don't eat. Exercise. Now, when we're talking about exercise for gut motility, I'm not talking about going to the gym and bench pressing or doing squats. We're talking about just movement, right? So things like different yoga poses are really good for motility. Zumba, right? Any kind of aerobic exercise is really good for motility. Okay. Fermented foods. So kimchi, certain yogurts, right? Be careful with certain yogurts because some of them don't have live cultures in them. So you don't want to be eating Dannon. Like Steven said, eat fermented foods and yogurt. So I'm getting Dannon with the strawberries. And no, that's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I'm talking about. Probiotics. Now I listed seed here because seed is the probiotic that I use. I'm gonna tell you what, when I was getting into like gut health and I was trying to figure it out and try to learn about it, I tried multiple different probiotics, and then I started reading different books. And there was one brand that was highly recommended by the author, which was Seed. And I saw a noticeable difference in how frequently I pooped, the size of them, and a lot of things just by taking that probiotic. And like I said, the company's name is Seed. So they come in like a green glass jar. I was trying to see if I had the bottle up here. It's not up here on my desk. Sea vegetables, right? So sea moss, Atlantic dulse, bunch of other sea vegetables, nori, right? These things are really good for motility. They're good for gut health in general, but we're talking about specifically motility here. Okay. If you need some sea moss, link under the video. And then, of course, different foods here: prunes, apples, mangoes. So the freeze-dried fruit powder, there's a company by the name of Vimergy that I use for my blueberry juice powder, and I just take a scoop and it goes into my smoothie. Okay. Blueberry juice in general, if you want to juice blueberries, good luck. You can do it. It's a lot of work and you don't get a lot of juice. There's another company I'm trying. I can see it in my head, but I can't think of the name of it. It's like Wellens or something like that. If you guys know it, if you guys know what I'm talking about, um, put it in the chat. But um, it's in the freezer section, and when you go buy like your frozen fruits or whatever, best frozen blueberries out there. But they sell a blueberry juice as well, 100% pure blueberry juice, and they sell that juice as well. And they usually have them, they usually have different sales and stuff. So that's an option for you as well. Take a look at. Um, I just looked at chat. Do you have a subscription with Seed? I did have one. I think it was for 3 months. And then I forget why. Oh, I had a subscription where I was taking, I think, like almost double doses or something like that. Um, I basically started taking less of them. So instead of taking like 2 a day, I was taking like 1. So then they started to kind of stack up. So I was just like, all right, let me just cancel the subscription because they're just stacking up. Even though I was still taking them, I was just taking less. I just didn't feel like I needed to continue to take as much. That was just a personal thing for me, um, but yeah. Dragon fruit, if you know, you know. And then of course, fasting of any type. Any type of fasting is going to be beneficial for your gut motility, right? So, how does fasting help? Very simply, the impact of fasting on the gut. Number one, activates the MMC, which is the migrating motor complex, on a very high level, which is going to clean out the small intestine. Your body goes into digestive rest and reset period instead of always kind of being in fight or flight, right? This helps calm down the body in multiple different ways. Stronger gut-brain connection via reduced inflammation and stress. This is going to increase motility. Stronger microbiome by not feeding harmful microbes. It also allows healthy microbes to thrive. So a lot of the bad microbes that we have inside of the body, or microbiota, if we're talking about what we talked about earlier, obviously if we continue to feed them, they'll keep growing, right? One of the good things is that we have issues with overgrowth. Fasting dramatically helps destroy them, and you have the MMC now able to clean them out. It's a 1-2 punch combo for your gut. Somebody earlier talked about leaky gut, right? So intestinal lining repair. So fasting dramatically helps with intestinal lining repair as well. So if you have issues with leaky gut or anything of that nature, fast, right? Go through a period of fasting. If you have certain supplements, or if you want to take CMOS, or if you want to take like shots of blueberry juice, these are good while periods of fasting to help with the with the strengthening of that gut barrier. Resets hormones that influence motility. We talked about motilin, right? So if you are using something too often, or if you're not using it enough, the body says, well, we don't need this, right? Doesn't turn it off, but it just slows things down and puts energy towards something else. If you're not using it, right, or if you're using too much of it, the body slows down production, right? So so fasting, of course, helps reset those hormones that we use for motility, and of course, obviously, greatly increases the motilin hormone. Okay. Now, as we said in the beginning, the HADR, sorry, HADR, I was gonna say 96. DR48 advanced is starting. So if you were not in the DR96, there's so many benefits that people that received. We saw the largest amount of weight loss of people ever in any challenge we've ever done. And we created the DR48 Advanced, which is different than the regular DR48 that is available for free on YouTube, or just in HA communities. This is an advanced cycle, right? Now, this is, once again, it's a hybrid fast, so it includes dry fasting, right, which decreases the inflammation and increases the body's natural usable hydration. Just in the interest of time, I just don't have time to explain how that works. But if you were in the DR96, you have plenty of people that told you my hydration levels went up, right? You can tell by multiple ways, right? Water fasting, as we go through the 48 Advanced, increases MMC amylin and to help clean the bowels. Juice fasting to feed the gut natural soluble fiber and increase hydration massively. So if you have any issue with absorption, or if you're taking any kind of supplement for anything, you need to do this so that way you can get that juice in there, right? But getting the juice in your body after you start to clean things out, which is what this process does, it makes it even more impactful, because the juice that you're now putting inside of you, it can actually be absorbed through the small intestines in a larger amount. This is going to allow you to absorb a lot of those nutrients that you are missing, right? So this is why when you're doing like any kind of juice fasting, some sort of cleansing is super important as well, okay? And then, of course, it includes raw eating, which increases hydration, because we talked about hydration is not just about what you drink, but it's also about what you eat and what you don't eat. This increases your fiber intake. We talked about how important fiber is. Decrease your inflammation, which is going to decrease weight. As you're going through this process, eating raw is going to help you maintain weight, right? So you're not going to be gaining a bunch of weight by eating bad, but you'll also find that you will still lose weight, but you definitely will continue to lose fat through this entire process. So if this information on gut motility was good and it struck a chord in you, the DR48 is very good for hitting every single one of those notes to help increase motility. So that way, after the challenge and you go back to eating, you'll be able to digest better. You'll digest much stronger. You'll have much stronger bowel movements. And of course, you're going to lose weight. So yes, Wyman's frozen blueberries. Thank you. So yeah, Wyman's is the company also that sells the blueberry juice. So if you don't want to juice them yourselves, they sell it, and it's delicious, right? So I would suggest, if you're like, oh, Stephen, I don't even know. Number one, if you want to lose a couple pounds, join DR48. If you know that you have issues, or if you feel like this information is just like, yo, this makes a lot of sense, I definitely think I got some slow motility, then join the challenge, right? And if you're just like, you know what, I'm not sure, do the corn test, 15 kernels, right? Now, don't get the Orville Redenbacher's, throw it in the microwave and cut the bag open with all the butter on it. Don't do that, right? But get you some kernels of corn and do the test and see how long it takes. And if you find that you were, I'll say over like 16 hours. But if you find you've gone over 24, 36, 48, yeah, it's time to do something. Now we're going to be talking about some other things later this week. I'm going to probably have another video on juice fasting, some of those benefits, and why, of course, the DR48 is going to be beneficial, because we're also juice fasting. It's a hybrid fast, so you get all three. So make sure you keep your eyes up for that. But I hope that this was beneficial. I do apologize for keeping you a little longer than I expected. I did say about an hour. I didn't give a time, but granted, first 10 minutes we were kind of just talking and waiting for people to come in. So I'm coping. Anyway, I hope this was beneficial. I hope that you all had you learned something. I think, as I said, if you stay for the whole thing, you'll learn at least one thing. I think that everyone can walk away here and say they learned at least one thing. And if you learn at least one thing today, it was worth it. It was absolutely worth it if you learned at least one thing. So thank you very much once again. If you would like to join, if you'd like to join the challenge, the link is down in the bio. Or I'm sorry, not in the bio. It's in the description box. If you need CMOS, I sell CMOS. It's in the description as well. So check that out if you want some CMOS. But other than that, stay tuned. I'll be back later on, probably next week. We'll have another video for you, another lesson, and we'll have a lot of lessons in the upcoming challenge. This core content. We're recording it all now. Some of it's already done, and the rest will be done, of course, before the time it starts. So even if you've been in a challenge, There's all new lessons for you as well that will be beneficial. But other than that, I hope you all have a great rest of your evening. Thank you for sticking here with me on a Friday night. If you have plans, be safe. Go enjoy a time with your family and friends, and think about motility. Think about how fast or how slow things are moving through your gut, and think on that. So, thank you very much. I appreciate you all. Thank you for being here. Have a great rest of your night. Peace.